Welcome back after lunch. We're now heading into our afternoon sessions, and the first one is Creating TV Advertising That Sticks with Richard Burrage. Now, Richard has 25 years of experience in market research and strategic consulting. He is the founder of Cimigo. Richard acts as a strategic partner for core consumer goods clients, focusing on new product development, brand positioning, and communications development. Richard is a UK national, but he resides in Ho Chi Minh City with his Vietnamese wife and 3 children, but he does travel extensively in the Asia region consulting with clients. So please welcome Richard to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Is this the state of TV advertising? No one's interested anymore? It's quite shocking, isn't it? Well, I appreciate you being here. Feel free to move forward, because there's quite a large empty room. This picture on screen is obviously quite some time ago, about 20 years ago. I no longer look like that, unfortunately. What I'm going to run through today is just some examples of advertising that sticks with consumers and some that really stinks, or sinks or stinks. And the reason I can do that is that we measure a lot of advertising, and we measure it in 2 ways. We measure sort of rational responses that are up here on screen for these sort of metrics, but we also, at the same time as we show consumers advertising, we're measuring their face. We're watching their face through their webcam or through their phone, so we can ascertain their emotional response to the advertising as well. What gives me the right to stand up here and judge advertising? It's a horrible thing to do, but we do it. So in the past 5 years, we've tested 450 ads. So that means we have a lot of empirical evidence about what's working and what's not working. And a lot of the lessons that we learn here in Vietnam are, they're true of most of the markets, I believe. Some of them are fundamental insights into really what's working in different markets. So I'm going to run through some key points that really make a campaign or a single execution stick with the consumer, break through the category, and get their message across effectively. The first one, and probably the biggest one, is one that, who in the room works in advertising? Who's actually worked on the development of a TV commercial? Anyone? 2? Okay. Anyone tested those TV commercials? Maybe, maybe not. No? Okay. One of the biggest things that really comes through for advertising that sits at the top of the 450 ads that have been tested are those that have got a central idea that is critical to both the brand and the story. So it's just a creative hook or a central themed idea that really brings together either the brand or the message, or ideally both, into that idea. I'm going to show you one example here for a candy brand, which does it with the message.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
They're playing hide and seek. So the central theme there is forever young and forever fun. And it's Chupa Chups, which is the Lottie brand. And they've run that theme through their advertising. That idea is integral to their message of that their lollipops are fun and forever fun and keep you forever young. And that is really the essence of their creative hook in that idea. I'll show you some that involve both the brand and the message as we go through. The second biggest area that really makes advertising effective is when it breaks the mold. So if you think about shampoo ads, how many shampoo ads have you seen where there's a lady in Asia washing her long, dark, shiny hair, and there's maybe a green background, and it looks very natural and it looks very fragrant. But it ends up advertising shampoo, and it's very hard to remember which brand was being advertised. So ads that actually effectively break out of advertising the category, they break out of the mold, they can be highly effective at standing out and gaining traction and being remembered, because you have to remember, here for example, I'm going to show you 2 noodle ads. These are these are happening in ad breaks that have got 20 commercials in them. And unfortunately, the way it works in many developing Asian markets is that somebody clever at the TV station says, well, there's 4 noodle ads, I'll put them together. There's 2 shampoo ads, I'll put them together. So breaking out and standing out becomes really even more difficult than it might be elsewhere. This is one that just essentially advertises the category.
Tết này tôi có một món rất đặc biệt.
Ôm mê ly kia Tết đã đến rồi. Linh tinh tang cùng cung đình ca vang. Sợi khoai tây cùng trứng ngon tuyệt vời. Vị thật ngon từ nước xương đậm đà. Mừng ngày xuân ta hát vang cung đình. Mì trong tay say sưa ăn là niềm vui. Ngon mê ly. Mê ly cung đình.
Tết này nhà bạn đã có mì cung đình chưa?
So it's very much a standard theme for a noodle ad to show the noodles, to show a happy family enjoying them, to say that they're delicious, and maybe show a dish. Pretty standard go-to elements in the storyline. I'm going to show you another one now, someone who's doing it slightly differently.
Mẹ ơi, con không ăn đâu. Con sợ bị nóng. Phải chi có mì không chiên.
Triển khai điệp vụ truy tìm mì không chiên ngay. Tình hình ở Pháp thì sao? Dạ không có, tôi không tới. Ngay tại Việt Nam. Mang hết về đây ngay. Mì không chiên hết xịn.
Sợi mì dai và không chiên nhờ công nghệ Nhật Bản giữ nguyên hương vị mì tuyệt ngon. Ồ, đi xin nè anh.
So I realize you don't necessarily understand the voices, but essentially it's a daughter saying she's hungry, and then the efforts the father is going to, through a heist, to find the noodles, her favorite noodles. But it's over-dramatized completely, but it stands out, and it cuts through a category of very standardized noodle advertising. So for that reason, it becomes across as extraordinarily effective and does extremely well. When I look at the 450 ads that we've tested, and I look at the results from consumers, and each one of those ads has been tested by amongst 150 minimum consumers in the target group, 2/3 of them are effectively advertising the category in that the brand isn't strong enough and isn't cutting through enough. That's an awful lot of wastage in media spend, never mind the production spend, and the heartache that's probably gone into producing that advertising. Third point is where the brand is really woven into storylines. So often we get a lot of advertising where we show a vignette of life or a short story, and the brand has no role within that story. It's just shown in the last 6 seconds of the ad or the commercial, and that's really advertising by association. This is one from Suntory Pepsi for a tea brand. So they're trying to associate their brand to the major festival in Vietnam, which is the Lunar New Year or Tet. And there's really no role for that brand in the story. It's just a bunch of people coming together and even pretending to drink. If you look at the shots, no one's actually drinking. Whilst this is an example of another brand trying to tap into that festival period, which is a huge opportunity in terms of sales in Vietnam. The expenditure of over that period is massive. And this is Bell, which is cheese triangles, as they weave their brand into a story that is associating them strongly to giving over that holiday period.
Kiểu này sao việc gì đâu Tết.
Ở đâu có tiếng cười, ở đó có Tết. Cùng có bầu cười trao nhau tiếng cười.
So rather than being there by association, it's integral to the story, the train being late, the child singing what is a very popular Tet or Lunar New Year song, and giving everybody who he doesn't necessarily know on the train and trying to cheer them up through his cheese triangles. But it weaves the brand nicely into the story, so the brand's presence and the ability for consumers to associate the story, the holiday period and that brand come through far, far more strongly. One of the most probably obvious things if you work in communications is it's far easier to do something visually than it is through a narration. And visual storytelling is also a story that can be told in 30 seconds visually is a sort of hats-off moment to the creative director, because it says they've got an idea here that doesn't need explaining with a voiceover. And they're getting rarer and rarer, unfortunately, that creative talent. A lot of advertising, I won't show you from a time perspective, but the one on the right is one that does it terribly for Dove, where there's literally narration for the whole 30 seconds explaining what's going on. And of course, it performs dismally. This one is for Coca-Cola, and I think there's hardly any narration.
Ủa, gì đó?
So that was an ad from Shanghai that we tested in Vietnam. But you can see, purely visually, it's told a very nice story and put the brand in a very nice place. Far better than attempting to do it through narration. The other thing that I see less and less of today is the campaignable ideas. So if you think back to, say, the time of Heineken, when the advertising campaign was the lengths you would go to grab a Heineken, that was a campaign that ran for 10 years. Different characters, different talent, different story, but the same underlying message in every execution that ran for just over 10 years. Today, very, very few of the executions that we're testing are part of a long-term campaign, which is a really huge lost opportunity, particularly for when it comes down to media efficiency. This is from Orion, the Korean manufacturer of baked goods or snacks, and Choco Pie is their product. But they've run, and there's more in the campaign than this, they've run along the theme of love is gifting is a demonstration of love, and Choco Pie is the perfect gift. And they've done it with siblings, they've done it with potential lovers in an office, they've done it between family members as they break into, again, the Lunar New Year tech giving period. But because they've got a consistent message and each execution is true to that message over time, it just means they're far more effective with far less money in communicating their message to the audience and having that focal message sit in the minds of consumers. And that makes them the leading brand in this category.
Alo con hả?
Tết này công việc bận quá, con không về kịp mẹ ơi.
Tết này bạn muốn trao tình đến ai? Cùng truy cập website Chocobuy để có 1.000 cơ hội gửi tặng trái tim bằng vàng cho những người thân yêu.
Quả cháu gửi tặng ông bà, qua Tết chúng con về.
Tết nghĩ đến ai, hãy trao tình ngay, tình như Chocobuy.
So there, again, that Tet holiday, everybody wants to go home to their roots, where they were born, be with their parents or their grandparents over that holiday period. It's a time of family togetherness. And that execution ran at the latest Tet holiday, and that was really tying in a promotion to have the company organize a gift if you weren't going to make it home for Tet, so it could give it to your family members who you would be missing that Tet. The other area of efficiency is this, if it's not campaignable, at least use consistent brand cues. So this is kind of advertising 101, I understand, but it's amazing how many executions don't and how many brands don't use consistent brand cues. This is a shampoo brand, a deodorant brand, a body lotion brand, and all sorts of personal care brand called Enchanteur. And it positions itself strongly around the idea of fragrance. However, every piece of communication they've run in the last 3 years features a woman in a yellow dress. The fragrance comes from a yellow flower, and in the background you see the Eiffel Tower. because they position them around fragrance and how fragrance leads to attraction and romance. And they do it consistently. The talent's different. The storylines are different. They're often advertising across different subcategories within personal care. But it brings them huge media efficiency. This is just one example. I'll be showing you one later of the cues. So here they're mixing a bit of Venice and Paris, as if it's the same place.
Lăng khử mùi Enchanté, trắng thơm nồng nàn cho chàng lay động. Enchanté, sự lôi cuốn kỳ diệu.
I'm not saying it's a great ad. What I am using them as an example of is the use of their brand cues consistently and over time, saving them, frankly, a small fortune compared to their competition. When I look across our tracking and our pre-testing, I can see that people who have consistent brand cues over a long period, 24 months and above, are having to spend 58% less than their competitors on media to achieve the same results. Now, that's got to be kind of, as I said in the beginning, 101 and obvious to CMOs, but it's just staggering the pure number of executions that have no relationship, even in brand cues, to the previous execution. Absolutely staggering. I forget what point we're on, maybe the 6th or 7th point. Engaging with emotion. So often a junior marketer will ask, well, should I focus on the function and the benefit that delivers the consumer, or should I be appealing to their emotions in the advertising? A lot of that depends on what state your brand is in its own life cycle and its own credentials within the audience. A lot of it comes down to a balance, and what we find when we look at the 450 ads, that the brands that can balance effectively the emotional pull and also the functional rationalization that they give a consumer are going to be the powerful ones. This is a great example, again, of tapping into this major holiday period of the Lunar New Year, or Tet, in pulling at people's heartstrings. It talks about the desire, again, of people to go home and see their family at this holiday period.
Mọi người làm ăn xa quê đã mấy năm rồi. Ai cũng thèm lắm cái Tết Việt Nam. Con vẫn luôn tự hào với biết bao điểm đến vào dịp Tết. Nhưng giờ nó thật vô nghĩa, vì chẳng có Tết nào con được ở cùng ba mẹ nữa. Quá muộn rồi.
Nhìn mọi người về quê ăn Tết, nhiều lúc cũng chạnh lòng. Nhưng công việc mà, chú về thì ai đưa mọi người về đây? Vì hoàn cảnh, nhiều người không thể đón Tết bên gia đình. Hãy trân trọng khoảnh khắc sum họp khi còn có thể. Về nhà đón Tết gia đình trên hết.
So in terms of emotional response, of all the ads we tested over the Tet period, there were 273 new executions that came on in the lead up to this holiday period. So it's an incredibly cluttered time. This one had the best emotional response. The problem with it is that very few people remembered the brand, because the brand was there at the end by association, and the story really was, you know, give thanks and think of people who are making the rest of the country run while we're all having our Tet holiday and back with our families. So extraordinarily good at pulling on the Vietnamese heartstrings, very ineffective in being recalled, but with the brand as well. Other emotions that people can often do, successfully tap into, are humor, family reunion, doing social good, mother's pride in treating her family well, romance and tradition. Of course, which emotion people tap into really depends on the brand and their target group, but these are typical examples that are quite effective in appealing emotionally to consumers. This is quite an old ad, but it's Heineken. It's not possible to get that on the screen? That's all right. Should I carry on? Play again or not yet? Move on. Move on. Okay. Let me show you one. Oh, going to need the screen. Don't blame the technicians. I insisted on having my own computer in front of me. I'm paying the price. Okay. Right. So you think the video will work? It will? Okay. Humor is a really hard one to tackle in appealing to people's emotions. The Vietnamese humor is very much a play on words, much like English sarcasm. So it's very subtle and very hard to get right, but when people get it right, it's extraordinarily effective. Another area that's quite popular is mother's pride, particularly in the food and beverage category. Out of the interest of time, I'm going to skip it, but I can show you. So emotions are absolutely key, and then it's getting the right mix of function. And of course, lots of brands have function, but many overdo it. This is an example, perhaps, of overdoing it.
Khởi đầu ngày mới với năng lượng sữa cho cả nhà thêm vui. Thêm sức bật cho mỗi bước chân.
Thêm sức mạnh cho đôi tay.
Thêm năng lượng cho cả cơ thể.
Sữa cô gái Hà Lan Active 20 cộng chứa canxi, phosphor, vitamin B2 và B12 cho gia đình bạn năng lượng sữa để luôn khỏe vui năng động. Sữa cô gái Hà Lan Active 20 cộng, năng lượng sữa cho cả nhà năng động.
So you can imagine the emotional response during an ad like that is almost zero, because it's so functional. As soon as you get into a CP sort of demonstration of a product, frankly, consumer interest and emotional response drops. And that's why the challenge is really getting to a sweet spot. Here's a category that does it well in milk, in that it ties in emotion. It's kind of easy because they've got babies. Babies always pull on the strings of mothers, the heartstrings of mothers, but it's also got a lot of function in there, and it works in a very unique Vietnamese context. But
cho sức khỏe và sự phát triển toàn diện của trẻ nhỏ. Hệ tiêu hóa bé thường khó hấp thu, còn non yếu nên cần đỡ nâng. Hệ tiêu hóa non yếu thường khiến trẻ khó hấp thu. Bia lắc optimum bổ sung đạo oil dầu alpha lactabomin, dễ hấp thu, nhẹ nhàng nâng đỡ hệ tiêu hóa. Mừng bùng bé này đã quê vui, ngày mới lên mau bắt đầu ở đây nè. Bia lắc optimum mới nâng đỡ tiêu hóa, vui khỏe lớn mau.
So, showing mothers and babies is always effective. They've got the function in there, and they've kept it light-hearted, despite it being quite a complex category. And they've got the sweet spot in terms of getting the balance between function and emotion right. Here's someone trying to tie in the Tet holiday period, again with emotion, but also keeping the brand and the functionality of the brand present, which they've done very effectively.
Mình mua nữa hả mẹ? Tết mà con.
Áo con còn nhiều mà em.
Tết mà anh. Chúng con có quà tặng mẹ. Bày vẽ chi con? Tết mà mẹ. Cháu có quà tặng bà. Tết vẫn đẹp ngọt ngào, qua bao năm mẹ gìn giữ. Thấy kinh đô là thấy Tết.
So she's remembering how her mother looked after her at Tet and made her the dress, and she's buying her mother a dress later on. And Cozy is a very popular gifting brand around that period. So they've managed to integrate not only the brand, the message, but also the holiday period, which is really complex and quite hard to do, but they've done it very effectively. So brands that get the mix of emotion and function correctly balanced, their advertising is way more successful and effective than somebody who's purely function or purely emotion. But it is a challenge. I think nearly to the end, the other area is surprising people. So earlier in the beginning, we talked about breaking away from the category, breaking the mold, not doing what's expected for the category, whether it's noodles, shampoos, beer, or soft drinks. In this case, both examples are soft drinks, but it's just speaking about soft drinks in a way that makes people stop and think. It surprises people and it provokes thought. And when you provoke thought, that means your audience is suddenly engaged. This is an example for, well, one's Coke, one's Pepsi. I'll play the Pepsi one because it's much shorter.
Tết chỉ vui khi trọn sum vầy, nhưng ba tôi vẫn chưa về kịp bữa cơm tất niên. Ông đi bộ hàng chục cây số để kiểm tra an toàn đường ray. Một mình không mệt mỏi, mùa đông qua mùa xuân, ngày mưa qua ngày nắng.
Pepsi cảm ơn người thầm lặng trao Tết trọn sum vầy.
Again, it's tapping into a particularly emotion around the Tet holidays, but it's also a father and son remembering their time together. And it's very away from the category of soft drink advertising. It's very specific to that holiday period. But it does make the audience stop and think about the time they would like to spend with their family and should be spending with their family. And again, that thought provocation is really important. The final point is simplicity. So it's that old mantra of keep it simple, stupid. Of course, as soon as you can't tell your story visually and in 30 seconds, and I would challenge perhaps even less, particularly as a lot of this ends up on off-broadcast television and on YouTube today, telling that story simply, quickly is absolutely critical. Simplicity is key, and focusing on one area. You know, as soon as clients say to us, well, I want you to test this creative, here's our 5 messages, we just know they're going to fall over. Because if they brief their agency to communicate 5 messages, we just know the ad is really not going to be very effective. They really need to have one core objective. They may have some character and personality around their brand that comes through in the advertising. There needs to be a focal message point. And this is probably the final example of an ad I'm going to show you. It's back for that brand Enchanteur, and their message is really fragrance. And that is, you know, if you did a brand image study in the market on any personal care and you said, well, which brand do you think of when you think of fragrance, this is the brand that everybody will mention because they've held this positioning for a long time. They've used the cues. They've got a mixture of function and emotion. It's also probably a good depiction of the state of consumer savviness in that this sort of advertising appeals to the Vietnamese. It's not that sophisticated. It's certainly not esoterical in any means. And it's probably the state of play for communicating to the audience. And the audience here would be a middle and upper class urban consumer.
Est-ce que tu sais qui m'a mené là-bas? C'est enchanteur, c'est phrase, c'est douce et c'est tendre, la sensation.
Sữa tắm Enchanteur với hương nước hoa Pháp cho làn da mềm mịn, quyến rũ nồng nàn.
Enchanteur m'a mené là-bas. Je te rencontre, ce sera réel. Je peux voler comme
Enchanteur, sự lôi cuốn kỳ diệu.
You know, it's got 16 words of copy. It's all told visually. And, you know, this is just looking at the emotion. You can see when it cuts into the actual product shot and the fragrance and explaining that functional end. Of course, engagement drops away. And that happens across any ad that we measure. But the key is to come out of that and end on a high and end on a positive, which again the ad does well because it closes off the romance takeaway based on the fragrance delivery. So these are the major points: creative hook, break out of the category, make sure the brand is really into the story and not there by association. Obvious 101s, use brand cues. Ideally, your ideas are campaignable, not single execution. You save a hell of a lot of money. Engage with emotion, make them feel good, but convince with function. Provocate, make them stop and think. And finally, keep it simple. So they're the fundamentals that, of all the ads we've tested, that really shine through of making advertising stick. Thank you.
So, yeah, well, let's start. Anyone out there got a question for Richard? Yes. We'll just get a mic to you. If you just say where you're from and your name before you ask your question.
Hello, I'm Toshak from A&E Networks. Just quick question. At one of the last slides, you showed your data system with happiness and surprise were the emotions you're using. What other emotions, from, say, Vietnam's point of view, do you find have an impact, like empathy, sadness? I know family was a big thing at the TED, but anything else that you find has an impact?
Yeah, so humor's really powerful if you can get it right. Social good. So, you know, CSR in a more consumer, in a large S way, has proven very powerful. Romance proves very powerful. And if you relate to what's watched on YouTube, then it's mostly boy meets girl, girls dropped, girls picked up again type story, love stories. So that's sort of replicating what they're watching, choosing to watch on YouTube and other channels. Social good, humor, romance, tradition for an older life stage. So married with children, that plays very well. And in some categories, this idea of mother's pride. So appealing to and reaffirming to the mother that she's doing the right thing by her family and almost applauding her and recognizing her. The mother in Vietnam controls the purse strings, so that she's quite critical to most consumer goods companies, certainly.
I don't think that's just Vietnam. I think that's everywhere.
Certainly is in my house.
I was wondering if we look at online as well, compared to TV ads, which is more effective and trusted in Vietnam?
So there's still this belief, it's a little bit of a naive belief, that if it's on TV, the government, and therefore the party, must have verified it, which of course is not the case. So that TV has an awful lot of trust. It's on TV, it's big, the government must be checked, they can't be lying. So if you look at a soft drink that may be an orange-flavored soft drink, and the advertising depicts a peeled orange and juice falling into this orange drink bottle, people assume that it therefore must be orange juice and won't question the fact that, of course, there's not an ounce of orange juice in the actual product. There's that much trust. Online is less trusted, but of course a lot of what you're seeing on online is people adapting a 30-second spot into a 15-second spot and playing that online. Haven't seen a lot of effective other forms of online work unless they're driving to a different medium.
So is that very specific to Vietnam, or is that for a lot of Southeast Asian nations, that attitude towards TV advertising?
Yeah, no, I think in Thailand, in Indonesia, it's also the case that TV is a well-trusted source. Yeah.
Anyone else got any questions from the floor before I crack on? Oh, yes, at the back there.
I have a bit of a silly question. Unfortunately, I couldn't join the beginning, but every time I see Southeast Asian commercials, there's so much singing in it. You know, you won't see the singing at all in European commercials or something. Can you kind of explain a little bit why? Why is it so? Is it part of a culture? Why they taken it so much to the advertising world?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm struggling to hear what you're saying. You're asking why is there so many jingles?
No, the songs, actually. I'm sorry, I'm probably drinking coffee, so don't speak that much, that loud. a lot of advertisement that I've seen for the Southeast Asian region have a lot of singing in it. Like basically they will sing throughout the entire commercial. You wouldn't see the same thing in European commercials. Like nobody sings there, you know. It just. So why is it so from your perspective? I always was wondering. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I think the jingle is a missed opportunity for a lot of advertisers. It's extremely useful in helping recall for brands that are going to have enough reach and frequency on air. And the other reason is that in a lot of Southeast Asia, it's a depiction of happiness. So if you're in a group of people and you're singing, that immediately implies positive energy and happiness. It's a popular pastime as a number one in a lot of the region, from Indonesia to Vietnam to the Philippines. So that's also part of it. But to be honest, it's more it's a tool being used by the agency to help recall.
So how important is that? If you're looking at a campaign, how important is choosing that emotive music?
If you can get it right, I mean, obviously, if you can get it right and you can use that music to decrease your media spend.
Yeah.
And that, you know, when you're talking about someone saving through brand cues, and music could be a brand cue, and you're talking about the savings, we're talking about millions of dollars of media saving on a single execution that could be saved because of the efficiency that is being gained by using brand cues. And the jingle is sort of a lost art, to be honest, but it's very, very powerful.
Yeah. I was wondering actually how localized content, TV content for adverts should be for the Southeast Asia region. I mean, how important is that?
Yeah. I mean, I think 101 it would be, if you can, then use localized talent. If you can't, then use Asian talent. And then finally, if it's a global piece. I mean, if it's work like you saw from Heineken, the idea is so powerful that the talent becomes irrelevant, honestly. But in other cases, not everybody has that such a powerful idea behind their executions. Even the Perfetti Chupa Chups ad, I mean, it's a pretty powerful idea they've got there. So the talent also almost becomes irrelevant. But if you're going to show, if you're advertising noodles or a fish sauce, then the context needs to be relevant to me, and therefore I need to see a kitchen and people that I would be familiar with.
And what about the audience for TV ads? Who are they aiming at, really? A lot of the brands.
Most advertising is aimed at women, 25 to 45, and in maybe the upper 60% of household income distribution. So that's where most of the money is directed at.
And equally, is that sort of Southeast Asian wide, or particularly in Vietnam?
Yeah, again, because of this they're controlling the money for the household consumption. Of course, if you're selling a car, or you're selling an air conditioner or a piece of property, it's different. But for the vast majority of consumer goods and healthcare advertising, and actually even financial services, it's primarily towards the female head of household.
Excellent. Are there any more questions from the floor? So before we move on, I do have a few reminders. We're back here at 4 o'clock for lifting the lid on Asia's best campaigns. Also, don't forget your Mumbrella app for checking what other sessions are on at 3 o'clock. But now, would you all join me in thanking Richard for that insightful session?
Thank you.